show that the impact of space actually comes from the applications, the downstream side of things. And we have I think a really good track record with respect to the number of mature applications that have been built locally, and mature applications that have kind of kept pace with the way technology has moved, to the extent that we can scale it across the continent. And I think we've shown demonstrable outputs in that. So I think we take awareness all the way down to the actual applications and benefits of space in society, and show that the engineering thing actually fulfills a role in that value chain. We'll be able to get a lot more traction on this.
Ship. Waiting for here's the engine. Slow it down, lights are deployed.
I would like to call our CEO for the South African National Space Agency to do his opening welcome.
Okay. And what I want us to do is to picture where we're going to be moving going forward and wrap our mind around the fact that there is change that's happening. Even though some of it might be happening behind the scenes, I think it's positive change. So I'll just give you a sense of what those changes are. So we're moving in terms of what are we currently experiencing as a country, as a space sector, in terms of our current challenges, and what is looming on the horizon that should be exciting most of us, if not all of us. When we crafted the national space strategy that we thought we should chase as a country, the first was on the back of some of the satellite development work we had done nationally, including Sumandila-sat. We thought we had had some capabilities in the country, quite adequate enough, to capture a global market share of the small to micro, medium satellites. And I don't think that has happened necessarily to the extent that we had foreseen or wanted to. We also thought it was important that when we set up the space sector, in fact, the way we crafted the national space strategy, we brought together a whole suite of government departments and asked them, what do you want to see from a national space program? And the government departments kind of articulated what they wanted from the national space program. And those were an expression of the user needs coming from the government departments themselves. And for those of you who don't know it, it reads as follows. An integrated, prosperous and peaceful Africa is driven by its own citizens and represents a dynamic force in the global arena. The important aspect is the indigenous capabilities to resolve Africa's challenges by Africans.
And our primary responsibility is to make sure that to do two things. One, that South Africa adheres to the international obligations that we've committed to. Also create an enabling environment locally for the space sector to function and thrive and all of those things. Being within the DTI, we also are responsible for supporting the minister in implementing space policy, advising him on changes that might impact our industry locally. And I do hope that you spread the word. So if you are doing any kind of space activity in South Africa, make sure that the council knows about it. So if you launch your satellite, it falls on someone's house in the middle of Nairobi, and originated from South Africa. The South African government is the one that is liable for whatever damage or any other consequence that comes out of that. So we need to figure out better ways of sharing information. I was really sad to figure out that there's people who don't know SAXA exists. Much more innovative ways or mechanisms for how we deal with trade-offs. So do we buy or do we make? Who do we make with? And how does that get done? Just to conclude, Space 2030's strategy agenda offers a really great opportunity for defining sustainable scenarios for the future. All of us, the space actors, are paying attention to what is going on, because we don't want to get to the other side and realize that what has been put in place does not really work for us. Health and sustainability of multilateral efforts, they really require constructive communication processes, channels based on how we get out of this winning, all of us. And I think that UN Copias does offer an opportunity for to be a platform that allows for that. And the third thing is around just building accountability. When we make commitments, that we carry them through and we do them to the best of our abilities. And that entails whether it's how we collaborate at international level, but also how we work together locally. And lastly, my sense is that with any of these things, we can only stay relevant if we deliver tangible results. Thank you. There have been so many developments that have taken place over these 25 odd years, and we need to look back and see whether that legislation is still relevant, whether it meets our demands, whether it meets the national imperatives. Ratified rescue of astronauts and the return of astronauts agreement. Recently, we have ratified the registration convention and the liability convention, and those two require us to implement those into our national legislation. Registration talks to the fact that all space objects that are launched into outer space must be registered with the council. The Act also mandates the minister to determine the national policy to be followed in the Republic, or everything else that we need as the country, rather than seeing space as an elite sector or a sector that is not talking to the needs of the people. So the policy informs how the country must participate. It promotes coordination and cooperation. It also encourages all stakeholders to be responsible users of outer space. Because if we are a member of COPAS, if we are party to the treaties, we cannot just do willy-nilly as we wish. We want to align the legislation and the regulatory framework to the international space treaties. We also need to align the legislation to the domestic space policies and strategies that have been approved in the country. With the new legislation, we are also interested in knowing whether our satellites are still operating, what do we derive from the satellites, and if they are malfunctioning, we also need to know about that. So there will be obligations from the council as well as for the licensees. The licensees will require to give us information on an annual basis. Thank you, ladies and gentlemen.
In an effort to enhance economic growth and sustainable development for us to improve the quality of lives for all South Africans. Our current investments, the MDA Sat Constellation for Operation Pakistan, the Sansa Capability Development, SAM, implementation of the AfriGeos Plan, and the Space-Based Augmentation System, support development for the National Oceans Information Management System, a communication satellite strategy which we will do with the Department of Telecoms and Postal Services, the HowTech facilities upgrade, and the space industrial framework development. Some of the new investments that we are embarking on now include with the HCD programs, it's the Pan-African University Space Institute again, the UKZN Hybrid Rocket Program, the Durban University of Technology Navigation and Positioning Program. We are also envisaging to start working with Fort Hare on some of the Earth observation products and services. We are, and we have started extending our EO capabilities in the SADC region mentioned. Operations Pakisa Oceans Economy with the Department of Environmental Affairs, and cooperation with various national and provincial departments, municipalities, state entities, and academia. And on behalf of Mr. Mudau, I thank you.
The governance framework, and I spoke about the move to set up an African Space Agency. But there was 3 elements to it. What we put in the policy was that Africa has to be the major funder of the African Space Program. The moment the majority of the funds come from outside of Africa, your agenda is set outside of Africa, not in Africa. So he gave us the green light to be a provider state for space-weather information in the continent, not just in South Africa, in the continent. And what we've seen so far is countries like Ethiopia, they're sending 3 full-time staff to South Africa to learn how do they replicate some of these facilities in Ethiopia. So we can work together and share that experience with other African countries as well. We're also looking at promoting greater public-private partnerships and the industrialization of space technology and its applications. But I thought I'd just give you the context for the African Space Program. And the important thing is that all that what we're doing as a national space program, we are reconsidering as to how we position that to take it into Africa. And I've just shared with you the vehicle by which we hope to do that. Thank you.
Hi, Val. I was just wondering, how would a university or a program go about getting themselves included in the Pan-African University for Space Science if they've not been already listed or unaware of it?
So the main purpose of TI really looks to address how do we fund technology development from proof of concept right through to pre-commercialization. Technology Innovation Agency was established in terms of the Technology Innovation Act of 2008, and according to the Act, the main objective of TI is to stimulate and intensify technological innovations in order to improve economic growth and the quality of life of all South Africans. So the main purpose of TI really looks to address how do we fund technology development from proof of concept right through to pre-commercialization. If you look at TI's positioning along the value chain in innovation, we really look at how do you take research outputs and translate it in economic wealth through commercialization and manufacturing. So basically we've been playing it's known as the valley of death, because you find that not many strong research outputs are always translated into economic value. So TI has created a number of funding instruments. So recently we've looked at how do we partner with Sansa and the other role players within that economic chain, just to strengthen how we would create a cluster approach to driving the space science forward in the sector. In terms of international partnerships, like I said, we have a number of partners on board, and we'd like to strengthen that through the space science program, as well as how do we then look at across universities, looking at how do we assist the previously disadvantaged universities in taking their mandate forward. Primarily we focus on the big universities, and we're saying in order to create capacity and skill as TI, how would we be able to assist Sansa to deploy those kind of activities that we currently have into the African domain as well. So that being said, I thank you very much.
About the various funding programs of the DTR, maybe let me explain it this way, that we have more than 15 incentive programs. Kindly refer to our guidelines on the DTI website. But incentive programs are divided into mainly 5 clusters. The first cluster is the one that promotes investment in manufacturing. The second cluster is the one that promotes competitiveness of South African companies, competitiveness enhancement cluster. The third cluster support services, or those enterprises that are in the services sector. And then the fourth one, we call it broadening economic participation. One, it's infrastructure investment, which means it's encouraging investment in various kinds and types of infrastructures that support industrial development. So in brief, those are the schemes that I think would be more relevant in this space, and then let's engage. Thank you.
Why are we partnering with the EU in terms of research and innovation? This purely just to support or to be part of the competitiveness, but also looking at the fact that the EU invests their own taxpayers' money. We looked at areas where we can as well benefit. It's looking at challenge-based project, and from the EU side also Horizon 2020 provide 100% funding. Unlike the FP7, we had to co-invest time and again in terms of the funding. But for now, South Africa qualifies for 100% funding from Horizon 2020. BRICS countries can also apply, but they are not funded. It's only South Africa which is being funded as part of the BRICS countries. We don't know what will happen when the program comes to an end in 2020. We may still be funded or not.
So we generate our own electricity. We have a generating station down the valley there. It supports both farms. It supports us, and it supports also the radio astronomy observatory. Most of the antennas have got the lightning spikes. So we try to circumvent that by, during the designs, the effing that we do such that in case of lightning strike, it dispersed away from the equipment itself. And so we've got our to support the teleport. We've also now put dark fiber onto the site. The deep space missions as well that we supported down the valley in the Radio Astronomy Observatory.
Well, for mapping and charting, we switched over this is also the outer Beerspoor, it's also the setting of the datum for a World Geodetic system. Yeah.
Which one is the Airbus one actually?